My wife slept with her ex and called me mediocre behind my back, so I disappeared, froze our accounts, watched her life slowly fall apart. 3 weeks ago, I, 34, male, was grabbing trash bags from the garage when I heard Sabrina's, 32, female, voice. She was sitting in her car, something she does when she wants privacy for calls. Normally, I'd have just grabbed the bags and bounced, but something in her tone made me pause. I know, I just thought he'd be more by now, you know? Like, we're in our 30s, and he's still just there. Same position, same salary range. When I see what James has accomplished, that's when my blood turned to ice. James, the ex she claimed was ancient history. Her sister, Pamela, laughed through the speaker. I couldn't make out every word, but what I did hear was plenty. You can always upgrade after the mortgage is paid off. Then Sabrina said it, the words that keep playing in my head at 3 a.m. I married down. He's a mediocre man with average everything. Average looks, average ambition, average everything else too, if you know what I mean. More laughter. I stood there, trash bags in hand, completely frozen, like literally couldn't move. Ever had that feeling where your body just shuts down? Eventually, I grabbed the bags and left without a word. She never even knew I was there. That night at dinner, she smiled and asked about my day like nothing happened. I smiled back and lied. Just the usual. You guys ever had to sit across from someone who's just emotionally gutted you and pretend everything's fine? It's a special kind of hell. The next 2 weeks were educational. I started paying attention, really paying attention, like how Sabrina always put her phone face down now, how she'd been working late twice, a week for the past 3 months, how she'd get texts that made her smile in that specific way, then quickly erase them. I'm not proud of what I did next, but we're past pride at this point. While she was showering, I checked her phone. Took me 3 tries to guess her passcode, her childhood street number, by the way, not exactly NSA-level security. There it was, James. Dozens of messages, nothing explicitly sexual, but plenty of "I miss talking to you and if only things had been different." Some messages referred to meetups for coffee over the past few months. Coffee, right? But here's the real kicker. I found bank statements for an account I didn't know existed. She'd been squirreling away money for over a year, around $20,000 that I knew nothing about. $20,000. I took pictures of everything with my own phone, evidence, because something in me just switched. The shock was wearing off, and in its place was this cold, calculating anger I didn't recognize. I didn't confront her. That's what she'd expect: explosion, drama, tears. Instead, I started planning. I called my buddy Dennis, 36, male, and asked if his spare room was still available. Called a lawyer, started separating my finances, gathered important documents, created a checklist in my notes app with a deadpan title, Exit Strategy. All while smiling at dinner, all while saying "love you too" before bed, all while dying inside. 13 days after GarageGate, I found myself following Sabrina during one of her working late nights. She drove to a trendy downtown restaurant. He was waiting outside. He looked successful, expensive watch, tailored suit, the whole package. They hugged for too long, and he kissed her cheek in that lingering way that's not just friendly. I took pictures from my car like some budget private investigator. When she came home that night, she told me about a team dinner and how boring it was. I nodded sympathetically. That sucks, babe. I wish I could say I was some Zen master through all this, but I wasn't. I'd lock myself in the bathroom and just sit on the floor trying to breathe. I lost 6 pounds in 2 weeks because food tasted like nothing. I'd stare at the ceiling, listening to her breathe beside me, wondering how I could have been so blind. 8 years. Our wedding photos still hung in the hallway, photos of 2 people who didn't exist anymore, maybe never did. I spent hours scrolling through surviving infidelity and similar subs, reading other people's stories, learning from their mistakes. The consensus was clear: don't show your cards too early, don't give them time to hide assets or spin narratives. So I didn't. Yesterday was the day. I waited until Sabrina left for her spin class, then I packed 3 bags, clothes, personal items, documents, left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter. No note, just gone. I drove to Dennis's place, explaining everything on the way. He didn't offer advice or platitudes, just nodded and said the spare room's yours as long as you need it. This is why Dennis has been my friend since 10th grade. I turned my phone to silent and watched as the notifications started rolling in. 2:14 in the afternoon, missed call from Sabrina. 2:15 in the afternoon, text from Sabrina, "Where are you? Your car isn't here." 2:28 in the afternoon, missed call from Sabrina. 2:29 in the afternoon. Text from Sabrina, "Are you okay?" Call me a sap. 3:46 in the afternoon, Missed call from Sabrina, 3:48 in the afternoon. Text from Sabrina, I'm getting worried. Please just let me know you're alive. 4:15 in the afternoon. Missed call from Sabrina. 4:16 in the afternoon. Voicemail from Sabrina. I didn't listen to the voicemail, couldn't bear to hear her voice yet. By evening, her sister was calling too, then some mutual friends. My phone kept lighting up like a Christmas tree. I finally sent one text to Sabrina at midnight, I'm safe. Don't contact me for a while. Her response was immediate, what's going on? Please come home so we can talk. I turned off my phone. It's been 24 hours now. Dennis brought home takeout, and we ate in silence while watching some mindless streaming show. He didn't push me to talk, which I appreciated. I've started making lists, who to contact, what to do next, how to divide 8 years of accumulated life. The lawyer I spoke with, Micah, gave me solid advice about finances and next steps, said I did the right thing by documenting everything before leaving. Tomorrow, I'll call my bank, change passwords, set up mail forwarding, all the administrative crap that comes with unraveling a life. You know what's funny? In all her complaints about me being average, Sabrina never once tried to actually talk to me about any issues. Never suggested couples therapy, never said, I'm unhappy, let's fix this. Just straight to James, straight to her backup plan. I keep thinking about that mortgage comment, you can always upgrade after the mortgage is paid off. Like I was some starter home she was planning to flip once she'd built enough equity. Well, surprise, babe. This mediocre man just walked out before you could cash in. I've turned my phone back on. 16 missed calls today alone. Texts, voicemails, social media messages from friends asking what happened. She doesn't know what I know, doesn't know what I heard. She's probably spinning stories about me having some kind of breakdown. But I'm not breaking down. For the first time in weeks, my head feels clear. There's a strange power in having nothing left to lose. This is just the beginning. I haven't even started yet. The morning after I left, I woke up on Dennis's lumpy guest bed, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. For a split second, I forgot everything, then it all came crashing back, and I just lay there, staring at an unfamiliar ceiling with a water stain shaped vaguely like Australia. My phone had 37 notifications. I ignored them all and made my first strategic call instead, to my bank. Turned out to be perfect timing. Our mortgage payment, $2,400, was scheduled for automatic withdrawal the next day. I froze our joint account, transferred exactly half of our savings into my personal account, and explained to the banker that I was separating from my wife. The guy on the phone didn't even sound surprised, probably deals with this all day. Sabrina texted while I was on the call, the joint account is frozen. What are you doing? I didn't reply. By noon, I changed all my passwords, contacted the credit card companies, and forwarded my mail to a P.O. box. Basic divorce prep 101 stuff I'd researched during those 2 sleepless weeks before leaving. Dennis came home for lunch, work-from-home perks, and found me making a spreadsheet of all our shared assets. He just nodded and said he was ordering food. Did I want anything? That's the thing about true friends. They don't ask annoying questions like, are you okay? When you're obviously not okay. Week 1 was systematic financial separation, not to drain accounts or screw her over, just to protect myself. Week 2 was focused on physical health. Dennis had a decent home gym setup in his garage, nothing fancy, just a bench, some adjustable dumbbells, and a pull-up bar. I started with pathetically light weights, could barely do 3 pull-ups without shaking like I was having a seizure, but the physical pain felt clarifying, like it matched what was happening inside for once. By week 3, Sabrina's messages shifted from angry, you can't just disappear like this, what is wrong with you, to concerned, everyone is worried about you. Please just let us know you're okay, to bargaining, whatever's going on we can work through it. Please come home. I read every message, responded to none. What she didn't know, I'd installed a small security camera in her living room before leaving, completely legal since my name was on the deed and I hadn't formally moved out. Ethically questionable, maybe, but I needed to know what was happening in my absence. The footage was educational. 3 days after I left, James came over. They drank wine, they talked, she cried, he comforted her, they moved to the bedroom. So much for just friends. 4 days after that, Pamela came over with takeout. They sat on my couch, drinking my whiskey, the good stuff I'd been saving, while Sabrina spun some tale about me having a mental breakdown and abandoning her. Pamela suggested Sabrina change the locks. Sabrina worried that might be legally complicated. Smart girl, she'd already contacted a lawyer. 2 other friends came by over the next couple of weeks. Same story, different audience, poor Sabrina, abandoned by her unstable husband who'd vanished without explanation. The narrative was taking shape. I was the villain, the unstable one, the guy who cracked under pressure. Fine, let her think that for now. By day 30, I'd established a routine at Dennis's place. 6 in the morning wake up, protein shake, 6:30 in the morning workout, 8 in the morning. Start work, remote, thankfully, 6 in the evening therapy session, twice a week via video call, 8 in the evening check house camera, 10 in the evening sleep, or try to. The therapist, recommended by Micah the lawyer, specialized in betrayal trauma. She didn't sugarcoat anything or push forgiveness, just gave me practical tools to manage the rage and anxiety. Best $100 an hour I've ever spent. I'd lost 11 pounds of fat and gained 4 pounds of muscle, downloaded one of those fitness tracker apps, watched my resting heart rate drop week by week. Small victories. Meanwhile, the house camera kept recording. Day 33, Sabrina crying on the phone with her mom about mounting bills. Day 35, Sabrina and James arguing about money. Day 40, a past due notice from the mortgage company on the counter. Day 42, James telling Sabrina he needs some space. Classic. Day 45, Sabrina frantically searching through files, probably looking for financial documents. It's weird. I felt nothing watching this. Not satisfaction, not pain, just confirmation. On day 47, I made my first strategic error. I ran into our neighbor Kyle at the grocery store, hadn't planned for this. He looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. "Oh my God, Seth, where have you been?" Sabrina's been worried sick. I gave him the ultra-condensed version, discovered my wife was having an affair, left to protect my mental health, been staying with a friend. His face went through a journey, shock, confusion, then that dawning realization. Said he'd seen a guy coming and going from our house but assumed it was a relative helping Sabrina through my breakdown. Kyle and I had always been on good terms, weekend grill sessions, helping each other with yard work. He promised not to say anything to Sabrina about seeing me, but mentioned he was having poker night with some mutual friends that weekend. I knew exactly what would happen. Kyle would tell everyone at poker night, the truth would spread. Sabrina's carefully constructed narrative would start to crumble. Sure enough, 3 days later, the house camera caught Sabrina slamming doors and screaming into her phone. So Seth's telling people I cheated? That's why he left? That lying piece of... The first crack in her story. I almost smiled. Micah the lawyer called on day 50 with updates. We'd filed the initial separation paperwork, but Sabrina had been dodging the server. Classic avoidance tactic. He laid out our options, including what would happen with the house. Current market value is about $30,000 less than we'd paid 4 years ago. We'd either have to sell at a loss or one of us would need to buy the other out. Given Sabrina's missed mortgage payments, now 2 months behind, her credit score was tanking. Buying me out wasn't an option for her anymore. I'd been saving aggressively for the past 2 months. No rent, thanks to Dennis. Minimal expenses. Focusing on work to distract myself. Not enough to buy her out, but enough for a decent apartment deposit once this was all settled. The plan was coming together. But then something unexpected happened. Day 54, my phone lit up with a familiar number, not Sabrina, her sister Pamela. I almost declined it, but curiosity won out. I answered without saying hello. Pamela's voice was different than I remembered, less smug, more desperate. She started with, "You need to talk to Sabrina. This has gone too far. She's not eating, not sleeping." I said nothing. Pamela continued, "I know you think she betrayed you, but it's complicated. Those things you overheard, she was just... Everyone says things they don't mean sometimes." That's when I broke my silence. I laughed, not dramatically, just a short, genuine laugh at the absurdity. Then I said, "Actually, Pamela, when people are just venting, that's when they're most honest. But thanks for confirming what I heard in the garage that day." I wasn't sure if Sabrina had figured that part out yet. The line went silent for about 10 seconds, then, "Oh, yeah, oh indeed," I hung up. That call changed everything. Within hours, Sabrina's messages shifted, dramatic. "I understand now what happened. We need to talk. I'm so sorry about what you heard. It wasn't what it sounded like. Please, Seth, 8 years of marriage deserves at least a conversation." For the first time in 54 days, I replied, "Nothing to talk about. Divorce papers are coming. Sign them." She called immediately. I didn't answer. Then came the financial reality check, a foreclosure warning from the bank. Apparently, Sabrina had been using her secret savings for something other than mortgage payments. The camera caught her pacing, crying, frantically making calls. James didn't come over anymore. Funny how quickly upgraded men disappear when the situation gets complicated. Day 60, the server finally caught Sabrina at work and delivered the divorce papers. She came home and threw them across the living room, then sat on the floor and cried for 45 minutes. I watched through the camera app, feeling that same strange emptiness. What I'd expected to feel like victory just felt hollow. That night, I did something I hadn't done in 2 months. I drove by our house, just once, slowly, at 11 in the evening. The lights were on, her car was in the driveway, along with another I didn't recognize. Not James's. I parked down the street and waited. 20 minutes later, a woman emerged, Marion, one of Sabrina's friends from her book club. They'd never been particularly close before. Interesting development. When Marion left, I used my key, never changed the locks after all, and entered the house for the first time in 2 months, just to retrieve the camera. I didn't need it anymore. The house smelled different, looked different, mail piled up, dishes in the sink, a half-empty bottle of something cheap on the coffee table, not the meticulously kept home I'd left. I grabbed the camera and was heading out when I heard a soft, "Oh my God," from the stairs. Sabrina stood there in an old t-shirt and sweatpants, hair unwashed, eyes swollen. For a second, we just stared at each other. Then she whispered, "You look different." I just nodded. 60 days of working out and actually sleeping will do that. She took a step down, I took a step back. Then she said it, "I'm sorry. I know you heard me that day in the garage, and I know about the camera. Marion helped me find it last week. I deserve all of this." I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd expected, just tired. I put the camera in my pocket and turned to leave. She said, "I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but can we talk just once before the lawyers take over everything?" I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in 2 months. This woman I'd loved for 8 years. This stranger who'd called me mediocre while planning to upgrade. "Fine," I said. "Coffee shop on Main, tomorrow, 2 in the afternoon. Come alone." Her face showed something like hope. I felt nothing as I walked out. My phone buzzed 16 times in rapid succession, missed calls from earlier that day that were just now coming through, all from Sabrina. The cell reception in the house had always been spotty. 16 missed calls, full circle. I got in my car and drove away, wondering what the hell I was going to say to her tomorrow. 61 days of calculated silence, and now I needed to find the right words. But this time, it would be on my terms, finally. I arrived at the coffee shop 30 minutes early, not from anxiety, pure strategy. Needed time to pick the right table, corner, back wall, full view of the entrance, and get mentally centered. The barista already knew my order. Black coffee, no sugar. I'd been coming here every morning for the past 2 weeks. Small routines, tiny footholds in a life that had become unrecognizable. While waiting, I scrolled through your comments on my last post. The opinions were divided, to say the least. "Don't meet her, it's a trap. Record everything. Just ghost her forever, King. She's going to try to manipulate you. Stay strong." I appreciated the support, but this wasn't about revenge anymore. Strange how 60 days of rage can suddenly collapse into something quieter. Not forgiveness, just clarity. At 1:58, Sabrina walked in, 2 minutes early. She'd always been punctual, one of the things I'd loved about her. She scanned the room, spotted me, hesitated. I noticed 3 things immediately. She'd lost weight, too much. Her clothes hanging loose, no makeup, hair pulled back, the antithesis of her usual put-together self. She was carrying a thick manila folder. As she approached, I remembered the first time I'd seen her, at a friend's housewarming, laughing by the snack table, 8 years and a lifetime ago. She sat down without ordering, hands shaking slightly, said my name like a question. My prepared opening line evaporated. Instead, I just pushed the recorder on my phone across the table and hit start. Old-school voice memo app, not hidden, fully visible. She nodded, understanding without explanation. Fair enough. The conversation that followed wasn't what I expected. I'd imagined dramatic apologies, tears, maybe even pleading, prepared counters for manipulation tactics I'd read about online. Instead, she spoke quietly, methodically, said she'd spent the past month in therapy herself, 3 times a week, paid out of pocket since our insurance only covered limited sessions. She'd printed out a timeline of our relationship, including when things had started to go wrong from her perspective 2 years ago, when I'd turned down a potential promotion that would have required relocation. She'd felt stuck, resentful, never said it directly. Instead of talking to me, she'd reconnected with James through social media, just messages at first, then coffee, then more. As she spoke, I sipped my coffee, watching her over the rim. The strange thing was how ordinary it all sounded. No grand passion, no sweeping romance, just 2 flawed people making shitty choices. Her affair with James wasn't some epic love story, just garden variety selfishness. The garage conversation, she didn't deny any of it. Said she'd been performing for her sister, trying to sound more decisive and less confused than she actually felt. Pam had always thought Sabrina settled for me. Sabrina had been playing to that audience. Not an excuse, she clarified, just context. I let her talk for 23 minutes without interruption. Then I reached into my own bag and pulled out my evidence folder, bank statements, screenshots, photos of her with James, placed them on the table one by one, not dramatically, just matter-of-factly, like laying out tax documents. Her eyes widened at the photos. You followed me? I shook my head. Parking lot security camera. Friend works there. A lie, but a necessary one. No need to reveal all my methods. Then I played the audio, the garage conversation I'd recorded on my phone that day, the day everything changed. Hearing it again after all this time was strange, like watching a car crash in slow motion when you already know the outcome. I married down. He's a mediocre man with average everything. Her face crumpled. She didn't try to explain it away this time. I stopped the recording and finally spoke at length, told her how those words had replayed in my head for months, how they'd fundamentally changed how I saw myself, our marriage, her. You don't recover from something like that, I said. There's no version of us after those words. She didn't argue, just nodded slightly, eyes down. Then she opened her manila folder, financial documents, mortgage statements, credit reports, bank letters. The reality was stark. We were underwater on the mortgage by $227,000. Her credit score had tanked to 540, mine was holding at 728. The bank had started foreclosure proceedings. This is where things got truly surreal. Instead of begging for reconciliation, she laid out a pragmatic proposal. She would sign the divorce papers without contest. She would agree to sell the house. She would take full responsibility for the affair in writing, removing any fault consideration. In return, she asked for three things: a fair split of our remaining assets, not unreasonable; 60 days to secure new housing, also fair; a private conversation for closure, not a public shaming, debatable. I asked about James. Her response was a bitter laugh. James, she said, disappeared the moment foreclosure letters started arriving. Turns out his interest correlated directly with her financial stability. She'd called him pathetic in their final conversation. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. She hadn't called her sister in weeks either. Pamela's upgrade after the mortgage advice had aged like milk. I sat with her proposal for several minutes. The coffee shop buzzed around us, people on laptops, first dates, normal life continuing, while our abnormal one hung in suspension. Finally, I agreed to her terms with one addition: complete transparency about finances moving forward. She readily accepted. As we wrapped up, she slid one more document across the table, a handwritten letter, asked me not to read it until later. We left separately, no hug, no closure, just two people who used to share everything, now negotiating the terms of separation like business partners. The next month was administrative hell. Selling a house in foreclosure isn't like those home renovation shows. No staged furniture, no bidding wars, just desperate price cuts and cold-eyed investors looking for bargains. We finally sold at a $32,000 loss, split the remaining debt. I took a loan from my 401k to cover my half. Sabrina borrowed from her parents who just learned the full story and were, according to mutual friends, beyond disappointed. The closing day was awkward, sitting next to each other at a title company, signing away 8 years of shared life. The agent tried making small talk, we both just nodded and signed where indicated. Afterwards, in the parking lot, she handed me a small box. Inside was my grandfather's watch, the one thing I'd forgotten to take when I left. She'd had it cleaned and the band replaced. Not sure what to make of that gesture, but it was something. 4 months after that coffee shop meeting, I moved across state lines, new apartment, new city. Not running away, just needed fresh scenery without memories on every corner. Dennis threw me a low-key going-away gathering, 6 friends, take-out food, no big speeches. At the end, he pulled me aside and returned the rent money I insisted on paying him, said he'd been saving it for me. That's the kind of friend that makes you tear up in your mid-30s. The new place is smaller, but mine. Second-floor balcony big enough for a chair and small table. I drink coffee there in the mornings, watching people rushing to work below. Work itself has been stable. My performance actually improved during all this. Nothing like razor-sharp focus born from personal crisis. Got a small raise last month, nothing life-changing, but validation that mediocre was always her narrative, not reality. Finally read Sabrina's letter about 2 months after she gave it to me. It wasn't the tearful apology I'd expected, more reflective. She'd been in therapy, unpacking why she'd sabotaged something good, why she'd been so focused on external markers of success. Mentioned her parents' divorce when she was 12, her father immediately upgrading to a younger woman, patterns repeating. Not excuses, she emphasized, just context for her own journey. The last paragraph has stuck with me. I know we can't go back, and honestly we shouldn't. But I want you to know that. The person I became in our marriage, that person who could say such cruel things about someone who loved her, that's not who I want to be. I'm working on being better, not for you, but because I never want to be that person again. I didn't respond to the letter. Some doors are better left closed. Last week, something unexpected happened. I was at a local bookstore, browsing the nonfiction section, when someone said my name, turned around to find Marion, Sabrina's friend who had helped her find my camera. The conversation was surprisingly not awkward. She was in town visiting her brother. We ended up getting coffee next door, talked for 2 hours about books, travel, the weird transition to mid-30s when everyone around you is either having kids or having crises. Not once did she mention Sabrina. I appreciated that boundary. As we were leaving, she mentioned she'd be back in town next month for her brother's birthday. Asked if I'd want to grab dinner. I said yes without overthinking it. It wasn't a date, but it wasn't not a date either, just possibility, no expectations. It's been 6 months since I heard those words in the garage, 6 months of dismantling and rebuilding a life. Some updates for those who followed this whole saga. Sabrina moved in with Pamela initially, but that lasted exactly 17 days before they had a massive fight. She's now renting a small apartment and working 2 jobs to rebuild her finances. James apparently tried to reconnect once he heard the house had sold. She blocked him on everything. My therapist says my progress has been remarkable, but I still have moments where I hear Sabrina's voice in my head. Mediocre man with average everything. Those moments are becoming less frequent. The gym routine stuck. I'm up to 12 pull-ups now without shaking. Small victories. Dentist visits monthly. Says my new place has bachelor pad energy, but like, in a good way. High praise from a guy whose apartment features exactly 1 fork and 3 gaming chairs. I've started taking a photography class at the local community center. Always wanted to try it. Why did I wait so long? The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't just break your relationship. It breaks your story about yourself, forces you to question everything. But maybe that's not entirely bad. I'm not the same person who stood frozen in that garage with trash bags in his hands. That guy defined himself by someone else's assessment, lived in fear of being mediocre, measured his worth through another person's eyes. The guy writing this doesn't do that anymore. Not saying I'm totally healed or that I've achieved some enlightened state of being. Some nights I still stare at the ceiling, replaying conversations, wondering where it all went wrong. Some mornings, I reach across the bed before remembering there's nobody there. But most days are just normal. Work, gym, dinner, Netflix, texts with friends. Small decisions that are entirely my own. Maybe that's the real revenge. Building a life that's mine, not spectacular, not mediocre, just authentically mine. And that feels like enough.